The galaxy ignored Earth's warning. That was their last mistake. The ship called Hope of Terra moved through the darkness between stars, carrying humanity's first ambassadors to meet the galaxy they had dreamed about for so long. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewing window and watched as the great station came into view. Axiom Prime, home to 4,000 different species, a place where the entire galaxy came together to talk and trade and make peace. She had prepared her whole life for this moment, but nothing could have made her ready for what she saw. The station was bigger than Earth's moon, covered in lights of every color, with ships of impossible shapes flying around it like insects around a lamp. "Ambassador," said her assistant, a young man named David, "we are being hailed by the station authorities." Elena turned from the window and took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. "Tell them we are honored to be here," she said, "and that Earth sends its greetings to all the peoples of the galactic conquered." The docking took an hour, and then Elena led her team of 12 humans through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Everywhere they looked, they saw aliens of every shape and size, some walking on 2 legs like humans, others floating through the air, others crawling on many limbs. The aliens looked at the humans with expressions that Elena had learned to recognize during her training, curiosity mixed with something else, something that looked very much like pity. A tall being with silver skin and 4 arms met them at the entrance to the great assembly hall. This was Ambassador Velthox of the Velkari, one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Conquered. "Welcome, young ones," Velthox said, and his voice carried a tone that made Elena's jaw tighten. It was the voice of an adult speaking to a child who had wandered into a room where they did not belong. "Thank you, Ambassador," Elena replied, keeping her voice steady and calm. "Earth is grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community." Velthox made a gesture that might have been a smile. "Your species has only just discovered faster-than-light travel, yes. You are classified as a Category 7 primitive world. Do not worry, all species must start somewhere." The words were meant to be kind, Elena knew, but they carried an insult hidden inside them like a knife wrapped in silk. The great assembly hall was vast beyond imagination, filled with representatives from thousands of worlds. Elena walked to the center platform where new species were presented to the conquered, feeling the weight of billions of human hopes on her shoulders. The High Arbiters sat above everyone else, 7 beings from the 7 founding species of the conquered. They looked down at Elena with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall over millions of years. "Humanity of Earth," the lead arbiter announced. "You come before the conquered as the newest species to reach the stars. What do you offer and what do you ask?" Elena had memorized her speech, but now she changed it. Something in her gut, some instinct passed down through generations, told her that she had to say something more important. "Honored arbiters," she began, "Earth offers friendship, trade, and cooperation. We are eager to learn from the wisdom of older species and to share what gifts we have. But before we discuss these things, I must make a request." Murmurs spread through the assembly. New species did not usually make requests. "Speak," the arbiter said. "I ask that a warning be added to humanity's official membership file," Elena said, and the hall went quiet. "Our scientists have detected strange signals from the galactic rim, patterns in the darkness that match something from our oldest stories. We call it the silence, and our ancestors feared it more than death itself." The silence that followed her words lasted only a moment before it broke into laughter. Not cruel laughter exactly, but the kind of laughter that adults make when a child says something foolish. "The humans bring us fairy tales," said the Jathani representative, "a being made of what looked like living crystal. How charming." "Perhaps they saw too many shadows on their primitive world," Velthox added, and more laughter followed. The lead arbiter raised a hand for quiet. "Ambassador Vasquez, the conquered has existed for 3 million years. We have cataloged every threat in this galaxy. There is nothing in the rim except empty space and dead stars. Your warning will be logged, as is your right, but I suggest you focus on more practical matters." Alina wanted to argue, wanted to tell them about the dreams that humans had carried since before they could write, the terror of the dark that lived in every human heart, the feeling that something was out there, waiting. But she saw their faces and knew that words would not reach them. "I understand," she said simply. "I hope you are right and I am wrong." The rest of the ceremony went as expected. Humanity was welcomed into the conquered, given a small territory on the edge of known space, and assigned advisors to help them catch up with galactic civilization. When it was over, Alina returned to her ship with her team. They had succeeded in their mission, but she felt no joy. David found her standing at the window again, staring out at the stars. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "we did everything we could." "I know," Alina replied, and her voice was heavy with a sadness that reached back through time, through generations, through ages of forgetting. "We warned them. We told them what was coming. When the silence wakes, at least no one can say that humanity did not try." "Do you really believe it is out there?" David asked. Alina did not answer for a long moment. When she spoke, her words were barely a whisper. "Our ancestors survived something terrible, David, something so awful that they forgot the stars themselves just to escape the memory. The fear is still in us, in our bones, in our blood. Yes, I believe it is out there, and I believe it remembers us." Far away, at the edge of the galaxy where no light reached, something vast and ancient stirred in the darkness. It had been sleeping for 1,000,000 years, but now it felt something it had not felt in all that time. It felt recognition. The prey had returned to the stars. And this time there would be no escape. The galaxy ignored Earth's warning. That was their last mistake. 15 years passed, and humanity spread quietly across the galaxy like seeds carried by the wind. They became traders and doctors and engineers, always helpful, always friendly, always keeping to themselves when the day was done. The other species called them hardworking but strange, useful but never quite fitting in. Captain Marcus Chen had spent 10 of those 15 years flying his freighter ship, the Perseverance, from one end of the Concord to the other. He had seen wonders that his grandparents could never have imagined, but he had also seen how the galaxy looked at his people. Primitives, they called humans when they thought no one was listening, children playing at being adults. Marcus did not let it bother him. He had cargo to deliver and credits to earn, and he did not have time for wounded pride. But lately, something had been bothering him, something that he could not name. The dreams had started a few months ago, dreams of darkness and cold and shapes that moved in ways that hurt to remember. Every human he knew was having the same dreams, but no one talked about it. His crew of 6 humans and 2 alien helpers worked well together. The aliens, a Velkari named Sethix and a small furry Thani named Crystalline, had been with him for years and had become like family. "Captain," Sethix called from the communication station, "I am picking up a distress signal from the Threshold 7 mining colony. They stopped transmitting 12 hours ago, but the automated beacon just activated." Marcus frowned. Threshold 7 was a Velkari colony on the rim, a place that mined rare metals from asteroids. It had a population of 20,000. "How far?" he asked. 6 hours at full speed." Marcus thought about it for only a moment. There might be survivors who needed help, and the Perseverance had medical supplies in her cargo hold. "Change course," he ordered. "Let the authorities know we are responding." The 6 hours felt like 6 days. Marcus could not explain the feeling in his chest, a tightness that grew stronger as they got closer to the colony. His human crew members felt it too. He could see it in their eyes. When they arrived, the colony was dark. Not damaged, not destroyed, just dark. The lights were off, the communications were silent, and nothing moved. I am not detecting any life signs, Crystalline reported, her voice small and scared. Captain, there should be 20,000 people down there. Marcus led the landing party himself. He brought 3 humans, Sethics, and enough weapons to fight a small army. They landed near the main dome and walked through the airlock into a scene that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. The colony was perfectly intact. The building stood straight, the equipment was undamaged, and the supplies were still in their storage units. But every living being, every single Velkari who had called this place home, had been reduced to gray ash. The ash was arranged in patterns on the floor, perfect spirals that seemed to pull at Marcus's eyes and make his head hurt. It was everywhere, in every room, in every corridor, thousands upon thousands of spirals made from the remains of the dead. And on the walls, written in that same gray ash, were words in a language that should have been impossible. It was not Velkari, not any galactic language that Marcus knew, but somehow he could read it anyway. "We remember you," the message said. Sethix fell to his knees, a sound of pure grief coming from his throat. These had been his people, and now they were dust. Marcus activated his communication device with shaking hands. "Perseverance to Conquered Emergency Services. We have a situation at Threshold 7. Total population loss, cause unknown. Please respond." The response came quickly, but it was not what Marcus expected. Instead of emergency services, he found himself talking to Velkari military intelligence. "Captain Chen," the officer said, "you are ordered to leave the colony immediately and speak to no one about what you have seen. This matter is classified at the highest level." Classified? Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. 20,000 people are dead, turned to ash, and you want to keep it secret. "This is not a request, Captain. Leave now, or you will be detained." Marcus looked at Sethix, who was still kneeling among the ashes of his people, and made a decision. "Understood," he said. "We are leaving." But before he left, he used his personal device to record everything. The spirals, the message, the scale of the horror. He sent the recording to every human he knew, using codes that the Velkari could not break. The journey back was silent. Sethix did not speak, did not eat, did not do anything except stare at the wall. Marcus did not know how to help him. When they reached the nearest human station, Marcus was met by people he had never seen before. Humans in plain clothes who spoke in quiet voices and knew things they should not have known. "Captain Chen," one of them said, "Earth has received your message. We need you to tell us everything." In the weeks that followed, Marcus learned that Threshold 7 was not alone. 17 other colonies had gone dark in the past year, all on the rim, all with the same perfect silence. The Conquered blamed pirates, equipment failures, anything except the truth. But humanity knew. The dreams had told them, the fear in their blood had warned them, and now they had proof. On Earth, Marcus stood in a room deep underground, a place that had been sealed since before recorded history. The walls were covered in symbols that matched the message at Threshold 7. "Our ancestors built this place," a woman in military uniform told him. "We do not know when or how, but they left us instructions. They told us what to do when the silence woke." Marcus looked at the preparations being made. Old ships being rebuilt, weapons being forged from designs that no one remembered creating, families being taught emergency protocols that had been passed down as nursery rhymes for generations. "Why are we not telling the Conquered?" he asked. The woman smiled sadly. "We tried 15 years ago. Ambassador Vasquez warned them. They laughed." Marcus remembered the stories about that day. How the great powers of the galaxy had called humanity's warning a fairy tale. "They will listen now," he said. "No," the woman replied. "They will not. They will hide the truth and tell themselves that everything is fine until the silence comes for them too. All we can do is prepare ourselves and hope that, when the time comes, there is enough left of the galaxy to save." Far away on Axiom Prime, A Jathani intelligence officer named Kira finished reading her report on humanity's recent activities. They were building things, moving resources, acting like a species preparing for war. But not war with another nation. This was different. They are preparing for extinction, Kira whispered to herself. And they are not afraid. Why are they not afraid? She filed her report and tried to forget. But that night, for the first time in her life, she dreamed of darkness. And in the darkness, something smiled. The galaxy ignored Earth's warning. That was their last mistake. The night when everything changed began, with 27 stars going dark at the same moment. Across the galaxy, astronomers looked at their instruments and refused to believe what they were seeing. 27 systems home to billions of beings had simply stopped existing. There were no explosions, no warnings, no distress calls. One moment they were there, and the next moment they were gone. The Galactic Concord went into emergency session, the first one in 500 years. The High Arbiters demanded answers, and no one had any to give. It must be a weapon, the Velkari representative insisted. Some enemy we have not detected. There is no weapon that can destroy entire systems, the Jathani representative argued. This is impossible. But impossible things do not care whether you believe in them or not. 3 days later, the first images came back from scout ships sent to investigate. They showed something that made even the oldest species in the galaxy feel a fear they had never known before. Shapes moved through the empty space where the stars had been. They were not ships exactly, more like ideas given form, geometry that hurt to look at, patterns that seemed to eat the light around them. They moved without engines, without sound, without any technology that the scouts could understand. And they were heading toward the center of the galaxy. The Concord gathered its military, the greatest force ever assembled in galactic history. 12,000 warships from 90 different species came together at the Koreth system, determined to stop whatever was coming. Admiral Velthox, the same being who had welcomed humanity 15 years before, commanded the fleet. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched as the enemy approached. All ships, he ordered, fire at will. 12,000 ships unleashed everything they had. Missiles and beams and weapons that could crack planets poured into the approaching shapes. The light of the attack was so bright that it could be seen from systems away. The battle lasted 16 minutes. When it was over, not a single conquered ship remained. 12,000 vessels, crewed by millions of the bravest soldiers in the galaxy, had been erased from existence. They did not even leave debris behind. The silence did not slow down. It did not even seem to notice that there had been a battle at all. Panic spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Axiom Prime was evacuated, its great halls emptied of the representatives who had gathered there for 3 million years. The High Arbiters fled to secret locations, and the Galactic Concord, the greatest civilization ever built, collapsed in less than a month. Refugees flooded toward the core worlds, billions of beings running from something they could not fight and could not understand. Ships packed with families flew in every direction, hopping to find somewhere safe. There was nowhere safe. Except, strangely, human space. The silence moved through the galaxy like a farmer walking through a field of wheat, harvesting everything in its path. But when it reached the borders of human territory, it stopped. For the first time since its awakening, the ancient thing hesitated. On Earth, deep in the bunkers that had been prepared for this moment, Ambassador Elena Vasquez received a communication request from the Velkari High Minister. She was old now, her hair white and her hands shaking, but her eyes were still sharp. "Ambassador," the High Minister said, and his voice was nothing like the proud tone his people had used 15 years ago. "We need answers. How did you know? How did your species know this was coming?" Elena looked at the terrified alien for a long moment. She could have been angry, could have reminded him of how his people had laughed at humanity's warning. Instead, she felt only sadness. "We did not know exactly," she said. "We only remembered, somewhere in our past, so long ago that we forgot how to remember it, our ancestors met this thing and survived. They left us warnings, buried so deep in our stories and our dreams that we could not lose them even when we lost everything else." She sent him a file, thousands of pages of human mythology from every culture on Earth. Flood stories and end-of-the-world prophecies and tales of the hungry dark that came from the stars. All of them pointed to the same thing, the same ancient terror that had hunted conscious life across the universe since before the universe existed. "Your species ran from this once before," the High Minister asked. "We did not just run," Elena replied. "We fought. We do not remember how, but we survived. And we have been preparing to fight again ever since we first looked up at the stars." Refugee fleets began arriving at human stations, millions of aliens who had nowhere else to go. The humans welcomed them, fed them, gave them places to rest. The refugees could not understand why humans were being so kind when the galaxy had treated them so poorly. "Why are you helping us?" a Velkari mother asked a human doctor who was treating her child. "We called you primitives. We laughed at your warnings." The doctor smiled gently and continued her work. "Because you needed help," she said simply. "That is reason enough." Outside human space, the silence waited. It had not moved for 3 days, and the galaxy held its breath. Then something happened that no one expected. A signal came from Earth, broadcast on a frequency so old that no living species had used it in millions of years. It was not a message in any language, but somehow every being in the galaxy understood it. "You took everything from us once," the signal said. "Our homes, our history, our place among the stars. You hunted us until we forgot who we were, but we survived and we remembered, and we have been waiting for you." The silence responded. It was the first time in recorded history that it had communicated with anyone. The response was a single word, spoken in a voice that was not a voice, heard by every conscious being at the same moment. "Impossible." On Earth, in the ancient bunker where the truth had been hidden, General Sarah Okonkwo stood before her officers and allowed herself a small smile. "They are afraid," she said. "Good, let them be afraid. Now we show them what humanity can do." Behind her, doors that had not been opened in a million years began to open, and the light that came from within was older than the stars themselves. The galaxy ignored Earth's warning. That was their last mistake. The caverns beneath Earth's surface stretched deeper than anyone had ever guessed, deeper than the oceans, deeper than the oldest rocks, down into places that should not have existed. General Sarah Okonkwo led the surviving leaders of the Galactic Concord through corridors that hummed with energy, past walls covered in writing that glowed faintly in the darkness. The aliens walked in stunned silence, unable to understand what they were seeing. "This is the inheritance," Sarah explained as they walked. "We found these caverns 300 years ago, before we even knew other species existed. The technology inside was locked, coded to human DNA, waiting for us to reach it." "Waiting?" the new Velkari leader asked. Her name was Selveth, and she had taken command after the old leaders died at Korath. "How can technology wait?" "Our ancestors left it for us," Sarah said. "They knew the silence would come again someday, so they prepared. They built weapons and ships and armor, then hid everything where only their descendants could find it. We did not understand it for centuries, but we kept it safe, kept it ready, knowing that someday we would need it." They entered a vast underground hangar, and the aliens stopped breathing. Ships filled the space, hundreds of them, vessels made of metal that seemed to sing in frequencies just below hearing. They were not like any ships the galaxy had ever seen, all sharp angles and impossible curves, designs that looked more like art than engineering. "We call them remembrance ships," Sarah said, "because they are what our ancestors wanted us to remember. We have been building more in secret shipyards for the past 15 years, ever since Ambassador Vasquez gave her warning. You knew we would not listen, Selveth said quietly. We hoped you would, Sarah replied, but we prepared for the truth. The work of organizing the resistance began immediately. Human space became the command center for what remained of galactic civilization, with 10 billion refugees crowded into systems that had been built for much smaller numbers. Marcus Chen, now promoted to admiral, was given command of the human fleet. He stood on the bridge of his new flagship, a remembrance ship called the Light of Dawn, and looked at his crew. They were human and Velkari and Jathani and a dozen other species, all working together. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we have completed the roster. Every ship is crewed and ready. Total force, 400 remembrance vessels and 2,000 volunteer ships from the refugee fleet. It was not much compared to the 12,000 ships that had been destroyed at Korath, but Marcus knew that numbers did not matter against the silence. What mattered was something else entirely. A Velkari pilot named Sethix approached him. It was the same Sethix who had served on the Perseverance years ago, the one who had knelt among the ashes of his people at Threshold 7. Admiral, Sethix said, I wanted to thank you, not just for giving me a place in this fleet, but for everything. When my colony died, I thought there was no hope left in the universe. Your people showed me I was wrong. Marcus put a hand on his old friend's shoulder. We are all fighting for the same thing now, Sethix. The past does not matter. It matters, Sethix insisted. We treated your people badly. We called you primitives, laughed at your warnings, and now you are risking everything to save us. Why? Marcus thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about all the times humans had been dismissed and mocked, all the insults they had swallowed and ignored. Then he thought about the refugees he had seen on the stations, the children crying for parents they would never see again, the elders who had lost everything they had built over centuries. Because you are people, he said finally, and the silence is not. That is the only reason we need. The first battle against the silence came 3 days later, in a system that had no name anymore because everyone who had named it was dead. The human fleet jumped in and found a silence harvester, one of the smaller shapes that moved through systems and turned everything alive into dust. The refugees had learned to recognize them, had learned to fear the way they drifted through space like jellyfish through water. All ships, Marcus commanded, weapons free. The remembrance ships opened fire, and their weapons were nothing like what the Conquered had used. Instead of beams and missiles, they fired concentrated thought, willpower given form, the combined intention of their crews shaped into force that burned reality itself. The silence harvester screamed. It was a sound that existed only in the minds of those who heard it, a psychic cry of pain and surprise. For a moment it seemed to flicker, to become less real, and then it fled. Fled. The silence, which had never retreated from anything, which had destroyed the greatest fleet in galactic history without slowing down, ran away from 400 human ships. The cheering on the Light of Dawn lasted for hours. Species that had never spoken to each other hugged and cried and laughed together. For the first time since the nightmare began, there was hope. But Marcus did not celebrate. He stood alone at the viewing window and watched the stars, thinking about what came next. General Okonkwo's hologram appeared beside him. Congratulations, Admiral. That was the first victory against the silence in recorded history. It was not a victory, Marcus said. We hurt one of their small ones. The main body is still out there, still coming. This was just the beginning. I know, Sarah replied, but beginnings matter. Now the galaxy knows that the silence can be fought. Now they have something to believe in. On Axiom Prime, which had been rebuilt as a military command center, the surviving leaders of the Conquered gathered for an emergency meeting. They had watched the battle, seen what human ships could do, and they had made a decision. Selveth spoke for all of them. We, The remaining members of the Galactic Concord formally request that humanity take command of all military operations against the Silence. Our fleets will follow human orders. Our resources will support human strategy. We should have listened to you years ago. We will listen now. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, attending by hologram from Earth because she was too old to travel. Accepted on behalf of humanity. Her voice was tired but strong. This time, she said, we finish what our ancestors started. This time we do not run. This time we end the Silence forever. The final battle was coming, and humanity would lead the way. The galaxy ignored Earth's warning. That was their last mistake. The edge of reality was not a place that any living being was meant to see. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Light of Dawn and watched as his fleet emerged from the jump point into a space that should not have existed. The stars were wrong here, twisted into shapes that hurt the mind, and the darkness between them moved in ways that darkness should not move. This was where the Silence had been born, a wound in the universe itself, left over from whatever had existed before the Big Bang. This was its home, and this was where the final battle would take place. All ships report ready, his first officer announced. 400 remembrance vessels and 800 volunteer ships from every surviving species in the galaxy had made the journey. They knew that many of them would not return. Marcus looked at his crew, humans and aliens standing side by side, all of them afraid, all of them here anyway. He felt something in his chest that he could not name, pride and love and sorrow all mixed together. Today we fight for everyone who has ever lived and everyone who will ever live, he said, his voice carried to every ship in the fleet. The Silence has hunted conscious life since before time began. Today we teach it that some prey fights back. The Silence came to meet them, not as scattered harvesters but as a single vast entity, a shape that filled the broken sky like a god of darkness and hunger. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Patterns within patterns, mathematics made manifest, the end of all things given form. The battle began. Ships fought and died in geometries that had no names. Weapons fired across dimensions, striking targets that existed in multiple places at once. The Silence reached out with tendrils of void and erased vessels from existence, but for every ship it destroyed, 3 more took its place. Marcus led the strike team himself, a small group of fast ships carrying the best pilots from every species. Their mission was to reach the center of the Silence, the place where its mind lived, if a thing like the Silence could be said to have a mind. They flew through nightmares made real, through memories of every species the Silence had ever consumed, through the screaming ghosts of 1 billion dead worlds. Pilots went mad and had to be sedated. Ships were lost to traps that existed only in thought, but the strike team pushed forward. At the center, they found something they did not expect. It was small, smaller than a moon, smaller than a ship, a tiny sphere of light trapped in a cage of darkness. It pulsed with something that felt almost like a heartbeat, and from it came a sound that was not a sound, a communication that bypassed words entirely. Marcus understood. He understood everything. The Silence was not evil, it was afraid. It had been alone since before the universe existed, the only survivor of a reality that had ended in fire and chaos. It had drifted through the void between worlds for eternities, with nothing but its own thoughts, until the new universe was born and life began to grow. And life had rejected it. Every species the Silence had tried to contact had feared it, had attacked it, had fled from it. It was so different, so alien, that no one could see it as anything but a monster. In its loneliness and pain, it had become what everyone believed it was. It did not consume life because it was hungry. It consumed life because consciousness was the only thing that could see it, could acknowledge that it existed, could prove that it was real. It was not harvesting, it was screaming into the void, begging for someone to hear. Marcus reported his findings to General Okonkwo, and she understood as well. The inheritance weapon, she said. It was never meant to destroy. Our ancestors figured this out back before they fled. They left us a different tool. The weapon was a choice. The remembrance technology could channel collective consciousness into pure creative force. Enough minds thinking together could reshape reality itself. They could imagine the silence dead, end it forever, make sure it could never hurt anyone again. Or they could imagine something else. All ships, Marcus broadcast. We have a decision to make. We can destroy the silence, but doing so will burn out every mind that participates. There is no coming back from this. Or we can try something that has never been tried before. He explained what the silence truly was, what it needed, what their ancestors had not been able to give it. We can hate it for what it has done, and we would be right to hate it, he said. But hate will not bring back the dead. If we choose destruction, we become what it was, alone and afraid and striking out at anything different. I am asking you to choose something harder. I am asking you to choose mercy. The fleet voted. It took only minutes for the results to come in. Mercy won. Billions of minds reached out through the remembrance technology. Human and Velkari and Thani and hundreds of other species. They linked together in a web of consciousness that spanned the broken space at the edge of reality. And together, they did something impossible. They welcomed the silence. They did not imagine its death. They imagined its healing. They showed it what connection felt like, what belonging meant, what it was to be part of something larger than yourself. They gave it the one thing it had wanted since before time began. They told it that it was not alone. The silence screamed, but it was not a scream of pain. It was the sound of something ancient and broken finally letting go of its grief. It shattered into a billion pieces and reformed as something new, something that wept with joy and shame and hope. Thank you, it said, and for the first time its voice was not terrible. I am so sorry. I did not know how to ask for help. I only knew how to take. You are not alone anymore, Marcus replied. None of us are. The survivors emerged from the wound in reality to find the galaxy changed forever. The silence, now calling itself the remembrance, swore to spend eternity tending the graves of those it had killed, to remember every name and every story. Humanity was offered leadership of the new galactic order. They declined. We did not fight to rule, Ambassador Elena Vasquez said, speaking from her bed on Earth. She was very old now and very tired, but she smiled as she spoke. We fought because it was right. Lead yourselves and remember what we have learned. Different is not the same as dangerous. Strange is not the same as evil. And sometimes the thing that scares you most is just something that needs a friend. She died that night, peacefully, surrounded by family and friends from a dozen different worlds. 100 years later, in a classroom on a rebuilt Velkari planet, a teacher stood before children of 30 different species and told them the story of the Great Silence and the humans who had ended it. Behind her, carved into the wall in letters that would last forever, was the first law of the new galactic age. When the humans warn you, listen. But beneath that, added by the students themselves, was another message, one that better captured what humanity had taught the galaxy. When anyone is alone, reach out. And in the darkness between stars, where the remembrance tended its eternal garden of memories, something that had once been a monster smiled and continued its work, grateful at last to have found its place among the living.